What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Bond's Apartment. I, of course, am Luke. Thank you guys for watching another discussion type video. I wanted to do a video on if Omega and James Bond were to part ways, which could happen. I don't want it to happen, but it could. Who should be the next Bond watch? Who should make the watch? What brand should it be? But of course, I can't talk about watches. I can't talk about James Bond without the watch guy himself. Emphasis on guy. Omega Bond watches. Lorenzo Paisan. How you doing, guy?
Man, you bring me out of retirement. This is quite the thrill, let me tell you.
You know, what's funny is every time we do any sort of video or stream or podcast or whatever, your room gets a tad more organized. Like it's like
Just a little bit.
yeah, you take a little shot at it. You're like, I'll like the jerseys look good, the cleats look good. A lot of Bond crap back there, obviously, of course.
Yeah, this is all good.
Yeah,
So is this. This is not.
yeah.
This
I
needs
see
to
a bunch
go.
of I see a bunch of Tom Ford tie boxes there.
Yeah, man, it's a work in progress, but we're getting there.
We're getting there, but hey, guy, I'm glad you could do this with me. I
Yeah, of
wouldn't
course.
want it
Thanks
any
for
other way.
always a pleasure to join my fellow Paisan on any
Of course,
adventure.
man, the guy himself. So, of course, like I said, your Omega Bond watches. Can't talk about Bond watches without you. But there's an emphasis on Omega with you, obviously. A lot of us Bond guys, especially our age, really, really big on Omega. Not for, for not just out of coincidence. I mean, it's the Bond watch. It's an incredible brand. They make incredible movements. They're always innovative with their movements, which is huge for most watch people. It's not just the same stuff over and over and over again. The availability is there, of course, but that could come to an end one day. You never know. Amazon's at the helm now. So I asked you to pick a different brand. It could be any brand. Could have been freaking Seiko. Whatever you want. Normally in something like this, I wouldn't know what you picked, but I do because we made some nice slides for everybody.
Yes.
But before we get into each watch, and I will preface for the audience, I had Lorenzo pick a brand and then pick what would be the staple watch, the military watch, dress watch, vintage, and then just another watch to throw in there. So, Guy, without further ado, which brand did you pick?
Well, before I reveal my brand, I would like to know what your reaction was when I sent it over to you.
So I
were
was
were you like, what?
Well, I think my exact response was "you sneaky fucker," but it wasn't. I wasn't surprised because you and I obviously both like the brand that you chose. I mean, most people do, but I was more surprised because you and I have had this conversation before, and the brand I think you really realistically, I think just from a price point perspective and kind of something you're interested in was not this brand. So I expected a different brand, but I think many people will be very pleased with the brand that you chose.
Yes. So the thing that did push me towards selecting this brand was the categories. It was very difficult for the brands I was looking at other than
Mm,
this, and I'll name a few of them. So one of the brands I looked at was Christopher Ward. I don't know if you're familiar.
I am. That surprises me actually.
Was English Watch Brand of the Year. They won that award recently, and there's a lot of good things happening with that brand. I was struggling with the categories of vintage and other with that brand, and even dress.
Mm.
And then the same thing goes for Bremont. So
That's who I thought you were going to choose.
that was who I was. That was my heavy favorite. That was my heavy favorite. But then again, like very tool watch, that brand.
Mm-hmm.
Very pilot watch, so I wanted to be able to fill out the categories aggressively, and I also saw a window to just expand on some things and create a very open discussion. So naturally, I went with Rolex because I thought if you're going to return to the roots, the books, the first iterations on film, which I don't want to go on a tangent because I feel like I'm about to, but I'm gonna make this short and sweet. Everyone says how like, oh, Rolex is the real Bond watch, and it was in the books and all this stuff. I was like, well, I don't see anyone crying about Aston Martin.
Right.
Bond drove a Bentley in the books. I don't see anyone crying about that.
Right.
And Rolex, it's pick your spots. So it just, I don't. But I thought it'd be a good exercise for myself to talk about Rolex and how it relates to Bond and kind of like pitch if that return happened, what it would look like, at least in my eyes.
So what's interesting, and I'll just jump right to it, and I brought the hat. I chose Breitling. Hopefully this isn't backwards. Probably is, but you get the drift.
No, looks good.
So the reason I chose Breitling is similar to you. I mean, the history is there, the vintage pieces are there, and then there's a tie-in with Bond, of course, similar to you with Rolex. There's a tie-in to Bond. So I think what you and I both did was, yes, there's other brands. Christopher Ward's a very good example, and I totally get where you're coming from with 2 to 3 of these categories for something like Christopher Ward. If you're gonna do Tudor, you might as well just do Rolex. You know what I mean? It's just it's very difficult to do some of these brands, but I think you and I both chose brands that will probably make sense to people because they've both been Bond watches.
Right, exactly. And it was funny they brought up Tudor because like that did, I toyed with it for like a hot second, but like you said, if you're gonna do Tudor, you just do Rolex. Like
Yeah.
you just cut to the chase.
And we'll get into it here in a second, but the only comment I have on Tudor is, in my opinion, Rolex version of Omega. They're innovative. They make a lot of the watches Rolex doesn't seem to want to make. I feel like they'd be 10 times easier to work with if you're making a film with them. But it's just kind of like the amount of people I think would be. But if it's a younger Bond, maybe it's like, well, you can afford the Tudor, can't afford a Rolex. It would make sense. There's reasons why it would make sense. So, without further ado, let's bring in your first watch, the staple watch,
Big
the
shocker
Rolex
here.
Submariner. Shock of the century. Why the Rolex Submariner?
I mean, there's history here for Bond, and if you're gonna put a dive watch on Bond, you got to go back to the roots here and the connection with the brand. I think this is a good move, in the sense of like it's a modernized version, that would be going on his wrist. There's also the fact that I like the no date. I can't stand the Cyclops
Yeah,
on the Rolexes, so I went with the no date. I think it's very clean, very classic, iconic model from Rolex. So I would say returning this watch on the Bond's wrist would be very, very nostalgic for a lot of people. I just don't see how you pick anything else, honestly, unless Rolex was willing to create something for him,
right.
which we know how much they like to go out there and make things that are different from what they normally do.
Yeah,
But
that
I
would
mean,
have to be the Tudor route.
yeah, exactly. But in this particular situation, like this is the watch. I mean, there's no question about it. So this was my layup, pick, out of all of them. So it's I don't think anyone would argue with me on this one. This would be the way to go. I mean, you could put up an argument for a GMT. I just feel like the three hand face for Bond is pretty standard. So anything other than that for his like dive watch would be a little bit over the top in my opinion. So
Right, right.
not
Well,
much to elaborate on here. Sorry. I mean, it's just like who wouldn't pick this watch for for the iconic wristwatch for Bond?
no, I
So
get it. I get it. Trust me, if it wasn't on the list, it wouldn't make any sense. And it's I like that you did the modern version of it. So it is like the Bond watch, it is the Roger Moore watch, but it's It's still the no date, but it's
Yep.
today's version.
Exactly.
Okay, guy. Well, my staple is the Chronomat GMT.
I
So
like that.
yeah, thanks, guys. So I did the GMT because we don't see him diving a ton, but he is
Mhm.
all over the planet all the time. So the reason I chose this one, of course, for the GMT's sake, he's always traveling, he's always in different countries. This is a watch that can be dressed up or dressed down. Of course, 40 millimeters, so it wears nicely. And then probably the biggest aspect of it is the price point. This is a $6,700 watch. You know what I mean? So I'm looking at it
Yeah.
like they're talking about a younger, unknown British actor. Yes, he's a spy. Yes, this is whatever. But it's like you want to say, like, you know what, you're young here. You can take this watch. It's got everything you need in it. It's going to tell you the time in 2 different time zones, blah, blah, blah. But it's not a $30,000 watch. Something like
Right.
that, even in itself, if say this new Bond is 27, 28 years old, if they were wearing, and that's similar though, like a Submariner, outside of like the difficulty of getting one, you can get
Mhm.
one for like 8, 9 grand. So it's not like
Yeah.
it's a $40,000 watch. So I think
Right.
you and I both went for similar, you had kind of the heritage piece in there. I did the GMT just for like the realistic side of what he's doing, traveling a ton. But I also really looked at the price point. I mean, for $6,700 for a GMT, pretty damn good.
I'm gonna be honest, dude. With the price point, I like let that fly right out the window because I mean, obviously, it's gonna be well, you picked Rolex. I'm like, oh, I
Oh,
mean, for
trust
me,
me, it
on
gets worse.
yeah,
It definitely gets for staple watches.
yeah,
The only time
yeah,
I cared about the price point.
yeah. I just kind of, I was like, I'm not gonna factor that in this one, which yeah, it was harder than I really thought at first because, like I said, I looked at other brands that I've kind of pegged as like potentials for the next James Bond watch. But
Right.
when you have this many categories that need to be ticked and need to be ticked well, like it was very difficult for me to like be like, okay, well, we'll make it work. Like you just can't do that with Bond. So I
Right.
mean, you going with Breitling, me going with Rolex, it just, I mean, those are solid bets to place, as far as who could step in. But I like what you picked. I
Thanks.
love the GMT. It's not overpowering. It's like
No,
there. It's not crazy. So if Bond were to wear a GMT as a staple, this is very well done. I will
appreciate
give
that.
you that. I
Thanks, guy.
do like the flair of picking the white dial. I thought that was an interesting choice.
Yes. Yeah. So I wanted to go away from the blue, and
Okay.
that's similar with you with the Rolex Submariner. I mean, if you're gonna do it right. So this for me,
Mm,
and it's like they've got the NFL line, and I wouldn't have, I would have played a little bit of fiction on this if I had picked one from like the NFL line, because
mm,
what they've done nice with that is the only thing say this had a blue dial on it and it was the Detroit Lions watch. The only thing that it says about the Lions is on the back. So
right.
you could very easily put it up here and I can just say, oh, well, I would do it with a blue dial or purple or whatever. But I
Yeah.
wanted to do something a little more subtle. And even a Submariner, like for what it is, yes, the Rolex Submariner, but it's a subtle piece. Everybody knows what it is, but it's
Yeah.
not loud. It's stainless
Right.
steel, it's not loud. So I wanted to kind of stick to that. And I thought the white dial made that GMT hand pop. So I
Oh,
kind
it
of
looks
gave it that was like
fantastic.
yeah, that was kind of like the one little piece of flair I wanted to give him. And not to mention this, I always think this looks like a roll or like a constellation. I think it's
Yeah.
got a very similar style.
I like it. Very different pick from mine. So that we're off to a great start.
Oh yeah, guy. Okay. The next one, it's also this is you picked one of my favorite watches for the next one. Let's see if I can move along here nicely. Military, bang. The Yachtmaster Titanium.
Yes. I went with the Yachtmaster because of its titanium properties. It's like one of the only, if not the only, titanium diving watch that Rolex does. Don't quote
Mhm.
me on that. I'm not a Rolex master, but I
You're not a
do
Rolex
like, the
Yachtmaster.
bladed. Yeah, I do like the ablated uh bezel ring. I think that looks really good.
Yeah.
I think it's a little more stealthy. The lightweight of the titanium is going to play. It's going to be a little bit more robust at 42 millimeters. I could see this on a rubber strap, possibly, for Bond, but
100%.
that would, yeah, this was the route I would go for something more tactical. And again, I'm not a big fan of the Cyclops window, so if this could come in a no date, I would definitely prefer that. But I mean, for what is available, this is the route I would go for Bond. Maybe even a NATO on this. But
Yeah.
it was a pretty simple choice as far as taking what Rolex typically offers, because mostly they do a lot of precious metals and stuff like that. So titanium being, a little bit more utilitarian of a look, this was
Hmm.
kind of, again, another simple choice based on the category.
Yeah, this is a great one. When I saw this one, I got excited. I mean, this is a gorgeous watch. And you are right, the Cyclops eye, I mean, Umbrian's, there's a
Mhm.
huge scratch in it. It's just like
Yeah.
it's protrudes and it's just itching to be scratched.
I mean, I get it. It's a staple. It's a staple, just like Omega's helium valve. So, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
can't
really
escape
hard
it.
to, yeah, it's hard to remove those things, since they're part of the identity of the brand. So, I
Yeah,
just, I could live with it. I'll be honest. Like, if that was what he wore, I would be like, all right, maybe it's just because I'm not as, familiar with it, because I don't own or wear one. So it
right.
just, it's a little foreign. But this would be that tactical watch I could see Bond wearing.
So let me ask you this. Did you have any influence, because it's very difficult, I'm assuming especially for you, because it's very difficult for me to not take any influence from Omega when making these choices, because you kind of look at what he's already worn in each of these categories. That's kind of what's ingrained in your head. So when
Hmm.
you look at something like this, did you have any influence? Omega's done a lot of matte gray, dark gray, black
Hmm.
lately. Did you have any influence from that at all, or was just kind of a no-brainer for you for this?
For me, there wasn't many choices. I mean, you could say he could just stay in the sub, you
Right.
know, but it's difficult because I would say if I'm taking influence from Omega, they create watches for Bond. They don't just pull from what they have in their lineup.
Right.
So that right there makes a difference. Like, yes, of course, the No Time to Die is a titanium watch, but I was really trying to factor in functionality into this, and I think the bezel ring being ablated and matte black, that plays with a more stealthier look. Like, yes, the
Mhm.
hands and dials are white. I get it, but if you're this minimizes the amount of reflective surfaces. Everyone's gonna like call that out. I get it, but if you have to truly pick from what they currently have, and that was another thing, it's not like I can go to a different brand and be like, oh, well, I'd pick this for this situation. That's why I kind of rolled towards Rolex in this situation. That was a pun. It made sense to go with Rolex because of the variety I could kind of work with.
Right.
So this one again, this would be the second layup of the five categories. I would say this one was pretty easy for me to make.
Yeah.
The other ones, I will tell you, were a little bit harder. So we're kind
And
of
they
going to get my two easy ones out of the way
Yeah, and in my
first.
opinion,
So
they
that's
only get
good.
better. Yeah, they only get better.
Okay. Well,
Um,
I like that.
yeah, no, and trust me, this is the thing too. There's people will find something to complain about, but it's as a military watch, the titanium, super light. It's very, the stainless steel, the matte coloring makes
Yep.
sense. And then it's extremely legible. So
Yep.
whether you're diving, whatever it is you're doing, you're going to be able to read it. It makes total sense. Very good pick, Paisan.
Thank you.
Next one for me
I'm
might not
curious
be a
what you went with
surprise.
because your first pick was such a hitter, dude.
I know. This one might not be the Breitling Super Ocean. So
Okay. I
probably could
see
have,
you.
yeah. So I could have swapped them if I was going
Yes.
full Bond from 1990s on. Well,
Yeah.
actually, kind of for always with just their dive watch. But I did this because from what they have that I also like, this one makes the most sense. So they've got slightly cheaper models that are definitely a little bit more rugged, but this is their dive watch. Once again, the legibility is huge. I love the way it looks on this rubber strap. Um, it's got a military feel, maybe a little flashier, with this kind of there's a lot
Mhm.
going on in the dial, but once again, and I know I keep bringing up the price point, this is like a $5,700 watch. So it's right into that sweet spot where the Seamaster diver is
Yeah.
sometimes is. So especially on the rubber strap, I was like, you know what, military, it's black. It's got black, grayish, like cream coloring in there. But the rubber strap was huge, and then the fact that this is their dive watch, right? So that's kind of
Right.
where I went with this one.
So let me ask you something. Is it stainless steel? Is that the base metal?
Hmm.
Okay. I
Yeah.
was like, the coloring there was kind of throwing me off a little bit. So I was like,
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, and this is what's interesting too, is you can get this on a bracelet, but I didn't want it on a bracelet. I just thought I
yeah.
keep thinking of his age, I keep thinking of those types of things. So I did it on the rubber strap, and then of course it's not titanium, right? So yours
Mhm.
makes a ton of sense because it's titanium. This on a bracelet, it immediately gets heavier, immediately gets thicker. To me, this is like something he was literally wearing in the field. And
Yeah.
then because he's not as polished, wearing it in a suit.
We both we both kind of hit on the same thing though. I mean, like with the rubber strap, like wanting to go that route.
Yeah.
I know they make like a white gold um Yachtmaster
Hmm.
and it's got rubberized straps, so like in theory it exists out there, but I was gonna
Right.
pick white gold. Like that's just kind of like
No way.
defeats the purpose of my pick.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do like the route you went, and we were kind of thinking on the same track there. Like tool watch, neat, rubberize, just make it comfortable, make it durable. As far as jumping into the water, not as clunky. Like I think that was a good pick with the rubber strap.
Thank you, Guy. And I think too, the dial, it's sporty, but it's well done. So I think it's got just enough flashiness for if you were to put it on the bracelet or put it on a
Yeah.
leather strap, nobody would bat an eye. So this would be
Oh.
like if he was all throughout the military and had one watch, and this watch had to do everything. I
Mhm.
think this kind of checks that box.
I do like how it's got the internal, like it's not a bezel, but it's like a bezel, inset bezel. That's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
kind of looks like a roulette wheel in a way.
Yes, like
Okay,
that.
Guy. Next one. Now we're moving into the dress watches. So this is when it's going to start
This
getting pricey and
this was
interesting.
this was a tough pick for me. I was between two, possibly a third, and I was like, I'm gonna stick to the notes that Bond has kind of carried recently.
Yeah.
So
Bang.
so yes, I went with the Oyster Perpetual. No date, no day. I
Yeah.
just wanted something clean, a 38 millimeter, mid-size. This reminds me a lot of the Skyfall watch.
Yep.
I felt like there had to be blue somewhere, and by putting the sub in place as his, you know, staple watch, it just didn't make sense to do yet again another black watch.
Hmm.
Or so yes, I kind of again I'm tapping into the history and the notes. I think this is a great looking watch. Personally, I would like it to be like more of a midnight navy,
I
like
was going to
like just
say, yeah.
yeah. I didn't see anything like that on their site. If it exists, that's what I would really pick. But I toyed with the idea of going with the fluted bezel. I was just like, this is a little too flashy, a little
Right.
too flashy, And with the tuxedo, like I feel like it should be a little more understated. This would be a great, like I'm gonna say, entry level watch for someone just getting into Rolex. It checks a lot of boxes. I could see this being a casual watch for Bond, like his everydayer. So it was again, this is a little bit harder. I looked at the day date. I was just kind of like, I went back and forth, but then ultimately I wanted something clean,
Yep.
simple, and that was like a mid-size for his wrist. So This was
So
the pick.
you hit the nail on the head. I love the size of the case. I love that it's very similar to the Aquaterra. So of course, you and I just, like I said, we can't get the Daniel Craig Bond era out of our
Mhm.
heads, and that's okay because his watches were close to perfect. But I was thinking the same thing, but with the dial color. But it is interesting because if you look at like the Golden Eye, it's a little bit darker navy, but isn't
Mm.
the Aquaterra like a little closer to this?
The
Like
Aquaterra is,
it's kind of in between, maybe.
I would
Like it's
say the Brosnan is like closer to this color, this shade
okay,
of blue. Like the Aquaterra is more of like a midnight in certain light. Like if you get direct sunlight, it's gonna look like this, but at night or in the afternoon, it's got like a very navy like hue
okay,
to it, And I do like the flat dial. Like you know, I don't want anything kind of going on. I don't want it to be busy. I feel like the Aquaterra, like with the vertical lines, looks really good. But again, this is a little more simple. It's a little more understated. I think that's where you need to be with a
right.
dress watch. You want it to be nice, but not in your face.
This is what's nice about this one. This is one of the, I think, one of the easier to obtain as well, which
Yeah.
once again, kind of, I mean, it's James Bond, he can get whatever the hell he wants. But realistically, because that's the thing too, it's like when I was thinking of this, I'm thinking, if they switch to Rolex or if they switch to this brand or that brand, you know, it's going to be very difficult for me to not want one.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like this is one where you can find on Chrono 24 in a heartbeat. And then, of course, depending on your status at the boutique, you might be able to
Your
get your
your
hand.
history, your history.
Yeah.
I don't want to get. I didn't factor any of that into my picks. I literally
No, I
was
know that.
going
I know
based
that.
on available designs.
Yeah, and that's
But
okay.
yeah, if I could customize it, Midnight Navy, something a little deeper
Yeah.
in the blues. But for what was available, this was like the pick I kind of went with. And I toyed with the other one with Roman numerals, and I was just like, it's a little too
I'm glad
flashy.
you didn't
Like
do
like
that one. I
yeah,
don't
I
want, I've
just
never liked Roman
yeah,
numerals on any watch.
yeah. Between that and the fluted bezel is like, which are very big like Rolex staples. I was just like, I kind of need to stay on this path of like keeping it subtle. So
Yeah, great pick.
this one was definitely a little bit hard. It's kind of like, it's funny because I feel like as we're going along, they're getting, they were a little bit more complex in the way I was picking them. It took a little bit longer on this one, but yeah, no, this was once I saw it, I was like, this is the one. There's no
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, good pick. All right, guy, my dress watch, the Premier
Interesting,
black
interesting.
dial on the leather strap. Now, this is where, similar to you, it got a little difficult for me because there's Rolex or Breitling Premiers that are like north of 80 grand. They've got like tourbillons in there, and don't get me wrong, very well done, but I don't care if it's Daniel Craig, Pierce Brosnan, or whoever the next guy may be. An $80,000 watch, it's just kind of like you're not the king of England. Like you work for, I just think that would have
Yeah.
been a little much. So this one, it's got kind of a chronograph style. I think they call one of the windows the duograph. And then the 60 seconds hand there, but I'm going to get destroyed by
I
whoever's watching. So let me get this right here before I screw it up.
I do like the flat pushers for chronograph. I
See,
feel like
you know
that's
what's
something you don't see
interesting?
much of
It
anymore.
makes it dressier for sure. But when I saw it in the store and they showed me like a newer version of the top time, I
Hmm.
still like if I were to buy something with chronograph, I love the vintage look, but I think this makes
Hmm.
it look dressier,
Yeah,
you know?
and the alligator strap definitely plays it up too. I
Yeah.
mean, that was a good choice. I will say that. That was one thing I was like, oh, a lot of bracelets going on here. And you're kind of limited, with Rolex as far as, certain straps and situations. So I
Yeah.
do love the flexibility and the fact that you did go with that leather strap for the dress watch. I think that's a great move.
Yeah, thanks, guy. And I will say this is now we're in the most expensive watch that I've chosen. This is like a good 10 grand. And then what's interesting too is there's about 25 different versions of this watch, ranging from 7,500 all the way up to 85,000. So it gets a little insane there for a minute. So I kind of picked what I thought was the most subtle. It's got the polished stainless steel on it, keeps the price down. It's not like white gold or anything like that. The black dial, I just picture him wearing this with a tuxedo. Makes sense. And then the strap is probably, worth $1,000. So there's that too.
I do. I mean, again, it's just like a completely different pick than what I went with, and I love it, and I like your reasoning. Like, I think there's a lot. It makes a lot of sense for the way you approached it.
Yeah. I actually would like if they got rid of that date window and just did the two chronograph windows. Um, it's the 60 seconds and then, or is that the split time and then the full calendar? And then even the tachymeter in red, if it was white or like gray, I think that makes it a little sporty. I mean, it's small, but at the same time, if it's white, I think it then looks a little too Speedmaster. Now I'm just getting nitpicky, so let's just move on. Anyways, guy.
I mean, I honestly I like everything about it except for instead of the numerals, I would rather them be markers. That would be
Yeah.
the only thing I would change.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. I like that idea too. All right, guy. Moving on to the vintage watch. The vintage watch. This one is going to get the people going because it got me going.
I mean, I mean, again, this was an easy pick for me as far as tapping into the heritage, and Fleming wore the 1016 Explorer,
Yep.
so I don't see how you pick another vintage watch to put on his wrist. There's a few others you could kind of lean on, but this would be the perfect nod. And for me, I would like it on like a brown leather strap, like something like that, or like something vintagey that would like work really well. But I mean, how do you not pick this watch for the vintage watch for Bond? Like,
Right.
it would have to make an appearance. Like, there's no way you do this without picking this watch.
Yeah.
So call me lazy, but I think if you're a real Bond fan, you understand the relevance here and the history, and it makes a lot of sense. And it's a 36 millimeters. So again, I've gone 41, 42, 38, 36. Look at that range coverage of sizing of cases.
Yeah. So I would not call this lazy. I think literally doing like the Rolex 6538 would have been lazy. That would have been a little more on the lazy side. This is a little bit more, let's go even deeper into Bond history and kind of pull out, a vintage watch that has a connection with Bond, but not in the way that you think, not an on-screen connection with Bond. I love this watch. I was happy I was able to find a nice image of this watch too, because, and I think this one was like up for auction at Christie's, this particular image. Why did you not go 6538? Why didn't you do Dr. No, Thunderball?
I just felt like it was I don't know. To me, going to something that already this day is so hard to get your hands on, and it's very unclear the exact specification of that model. I was doing a little more research, when I was making these picks. And one fascinating thing I learned about the, 6538 was that there was like 200 of them made that were, of the exact specification of the one that Bond wore, and I never knew that. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And I was, it was also a 1950s watch. I think it was 1956 was the year of the version he wore in the film.
Yeah.
So by the time the movie came out, it was already discontinued. And now you're telling me like 70 years later, by the time the next Bond film comes out, that this is a viable option. Like 1016s are readily available. You can find them, around. And it doesn't have to be, a Fleming like 50s version, like,
Right.
something in that realm. But it seemed like it would have been just too much on the nose to go that route. And
Yeah.
so, and again, we already got a sub. Why do I need a secondary sub? It just, you want to diversify what you're putting out there. And again, case size played a factor here. You know, just, I was trying to make it a little bit more leaning more into the heritage, but not just being like, oh, well, this is just so iconic. We have to do this piece.
Right. Right.
So I just steered away from it. But,
Well, it's got an incredibly military look to it too. It's got that very
exactly.
simple
Mhm.
vintage military look. I love this choice. And I will say too, you got to see the Univex 6538 when you were in town a few weeks ago. And I think you kind of liked it. That homage Rolex
Yes.
that I have.
Yes. It was a very interesting piece. I got to fiddle with it a little bit when I was at your house, which was nice. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
of course.
Um,
He's talking about
it's
the
just
watch.
like, it's just, yeah, yeah, I am talking about the watch.
Look out.
Um, I just, it's just one of those things where I just feel like it's kind of like a DB5. Like, you just don't play with that. Like, it's
Yeah.
if you have the original, then you have the original. Otherwise, just move on to something else. Don't
Yeah.
try to replicate it.
You know
Just
something
get the
interesting
thing.
too? If my wife were to come in here and say, you can buy a new watch, and if for some reason I was going Rolex, I love the Explorer and the Explorer 2. Those are like my top two choices. I mean, and it would be
Yeah.
very difficult to pick between that or an Oyster Perpetual or a Submariner or whatever, but I've always been drawn to the Explorer, which doesn't look a hell of a lot like this anymore. But this looks
No, it
very
definitely.
military.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the newer one's definitely a little bit more machined and just a little more polished and
Yeah.
it's nice. Don't get me wrong. I feel like again, this is more tool, more, just very vintagey vibes.
Yeah.
So this was my pick.
Proud of this pick,
Can't
guy.
beat it.
What do you think no, you can't. What do you think I picked for my vintage Breitling?
I would say I would be shocked if you didn't go to the top time. I'd be very yeah.
Whoa!
I was like, there's no way you
So
don't pick the top time.
no. So of course, first of all, looking like this, not a Geiger counter. Okay.
Hmm.
So of
Yeah.
course, similar to you, it's got that Bond history. It's a little different than yours in the sense of I think we actually see him wear a Breitling twice. I hope I'm not mistaken. I know once for sure, but I think there's a second one in there. If not, whatever. I'm wrong all the time. I'm sure I'll hear about it in the comments. But
I think this is the one I know of. I'm trying to like jog
there
my
might
memory
not be
if
a
there.
second one. But the reason I chose this one is a similar to the Explorer. You can find this one. This one you
Mhm.
can find, and it's not crazy expensive. And I think similar to what you said with the Explorer, I don't think it would be something he's buying. I think it was given to him. I think it was gifted by Q or his father or whatever. However you want to play the game.
Yeah.
I don't think he sought this watch out. But yeah, I mean this was my layup. This was we'll say this because I'm probably wrong. The only time he wore Breitling in the series. I'm probably completely wrong.
Hmm.
Um, I just talked about this with the Premiere. I love those vintage style pushers. This reminds me a hell of a lot of your vintage Omega. Very clean, similar dial color, pushers. Um, it was a no-brainer. Had to have this as my vintage. Made the most sense. I will say a vintage Navitimer kind of floated around in my head a little bit,
I can
but
see that.
certain ones, I mean my Breitling that I have on here, this it's called the Breitling Intruder or Pluton. Technically, I think it's in the Navitimer family. So I didn't want to see anything quartz. I didn't want to see anything with like a digital window.
Right.
But I would have gone a lot farther back. I think this one's from the 2000s, so I would have gone a lot farther back, but this just made the most sense. It's very similar to yours. It makes the most sense. It would be kind of sacrilege to not include it. So this is
I
my
would have been
pick.
shocked if you didn't put it in here. I really would have. So when you're going to tee that up, I was like, if it's not the top time, I'm gonna be really shocked.
Yeah.
Also, like all your reasoning makes a ton of sense. Like I'm there with you on that. I do like how clean the dial is. The two sub dials just being there. It's just, immediately my brain transports to fucking Thunderball. So
Yeah.
like I just, great pick. Can't go wrong
Thanks.
with that pick.
I mean, this is one of those watches where I wanted to get, and the reason I chose this image is because clearly all the images have been straight from the website. And then with
Yeah.
yours and this one, I had to find as best as I could that was like a straight on, retail shot.
It's
But
hard.
oh yeah, but when I see it on like a leather or sailcloth or whatever, a
Yeah.
NATO, it reminds me so much of that vintage that you have from Spectre. Just so much.
No.
And it's just one of those watches that I think if I were to see in person, it's just kind of something it's different than seeing a lot of watches. Like when I finally saw your vintage, it was just like you see something like that, see how beautifully made it is. You realize that it's 60 plus years old and it works perfectly. This to me is similar to that. It's like just absolutely beautiful watch. Chronograph is great. Um, yeah, I thought this was my
Can't go
layup.
wrong, dude.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with that pick. Had to come back somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, guy. I appreciate you as always. Let's go on to your last one. This is the other category. So we covered the normal categories. We added a fifth watch because we see Daniel Craig wear all kinds of different stuff. So Roger Moore wearing a million things, blah, 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 blah. Your fifth and final watch, which actually, I hate to admit, surprised me. Rolex Daytona.
Yes. So this again, I'm tapping into a lot of the Bond history, the Bond lore,
Yep.
and we had George Lazenby wore a pre-Daytona chronograph
Yep.
in Her Majesty's Secret Service, so that's where this influence kind of came in. I went with the white dial because it was different than all my other picks, and I love the Steve McQueen, kind of tie in there. So I thought this would be a great, like, satisfy the people that want Bond to wear a chronograph and all those things. It's definitely more of a luxury watch. We're looking at like 17K for one of
Yep.
these. So,
Yep.
but I like it. I think it'd be a cool direction to put Bond in one of these and just let it fly a little bit, So it might be a little bit too flashy for Bond, some people might say, but I was like, there's a lot of heritage here, so let's just go for it. So that was why I kind of went this direction. So why did it throw you off when you saw this pick?
So it threw me off only because we just haven't seen the Speedy, and but it's like people get so hard into being like, well, why would he wear one? He's not racing. Well, it's like, it doesn't matter. If he's wearing the watches he's wearing, he should be a watch guy at this point. And if you're as Omega as Bond is, you most likely have a Speedmaster. So this kind of threw me off. And then also in the sense of, I was kind of surprised you went the kind of Paul Newman route with it.
Paul Newman. That's who I was thinking of. I said, oh man, I fucked
You're like,
that
I
one
knew
up.
I did it. I just don't remember
I
his
did.
name.
I meant Paul Newman. My bad.
What did you say?
I said, what's his face? Steve McQueen. I don't know why I said Steve McQueen.
People know what you meant. Well, we
I
fixed
meant
it.
I meant Paul Newman. So
Yeah. So obviously the Paul Newman, it's actually white dial and the chronograph is all black. It's not the black ring.
yeah,
But this
right.
is a very similar, kind of
right.
the
Taking
Panda
notes.
dial. Yes.
Taking notes from that one.
But you know what though? It makes sense because there's also like the Daytona Platinum that Michael Bublé wears, which is like 65 grand. I mean, it's like I saw him in concert at Little Caesars Arena, and his stage was on one end and I was on the other, and all you could see was the light just freaking bouncing in every direction off that Platinum Daytona. And it's gorgeous, but it would make no sense. But this one's a very good pick. I mean, I've always loved the Daytona. I think there's homage in there to Paul Newman. it's not exactly like his, but
Hmm.
I think what's interesting about this choice is I think this wouldn't really make him like a watch guy. Like I know a lot of people who love Rolexes
Yeah,
like the Daytona, but I think this would be a very deliberate like purchase, you know?
yeah. It's also like a staple of
Yeah,
Rolex. Everyone says the sub, which of course, but this would be, other than the Pepsi, I would say those three are like their big three hitters.
right.
So I mean, it's kind of like the Seamaster in blue, the black Moonwatch. It's the same kind of It's very recognizable,
Yeah,
and so I personally would like to see Bond wear it as an other watch in a particular situation. And again, a lot of the influence on this came from Lazenby wearing his pre Daytona
right.
chronograph. So I was trying to catch that kind of like vibe there.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I love this pick.
yeah.
I love this pick. Um, Another one where I'm glad this is the one you chose. The high polish is interesting
Hmm.
too, in certain
Yeah.
areas. I think this would be if we were to see him 2 or 3 movies in, like in his
Yeah.
naval uniform, I think he'd
Yeah.
have this on. You know what I
I'm the
mean? Just
same.
like I'm a badass. I've got
Yeah.
money up the ass. This is what I'm
Let's
gonna wear.
go.
So, okay, so for my last pick, I did something similar, and I agree with you. This is such a staple watch. I mean, and this is where it gets difficult. The Submariner's a staple, the Seamaster's a staple, but the Daytona is, and the Speedy is. So I
I
went
think I
with
know what it
Breitling
is.
staple, the Navitimer, but I chose a
Yeah.
blue dial chronograph.
Okay. Let's see ya.
So once again, it's slightly different in color scheme than
Yeah.
the Premier. Now we're back to the chronograph. This is the true pilot's watch. This is Breitling staple watch. For them, this is their staple watch through and through. I don't think there's really much debate on if there's any other one.
Right.
I think with Rolex, people would say the Submariner. With Omega, they'd say the Sub or the Seamaster, but there's an argument to be made for the Daytona. There's an argument to be made for the Speedmaster. I think it's pretty clear cut. This is Breitling's go-to piece. So I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. If he were to be outfitted by Breitling, I don't see there not being a point in time when he has this on. There's a lot going on these watches, but I still love them. Very, very innovative if you're a pilot. Like there's a lot to do if you're a pilot with this watch. The price point is still good. This one's a little over 10 grand. There's about 40 plus versions of this watch in their catalog right now, different color schemes. And just like you said, I wanted to get a little blue in there at one point.
Yeah.
So this was my pick, the Navitimer with the darker blue dial, and it's got the black accents in there, what kind of make the blue almost seem a little darker than it probably is.
Do you know if that chronograph hand is flyback on this? I
I
think
don't
it
know, but
is.
I can look because I've got it pulled up here.
I want to say it is on this model. That's a function of the chronograph.
Yeah, let's see.
Look at me getting all technical. I'm just curious. I feel like it would be on a Navitimer.
It doesn't say on the site. Might not be.
I would figure a pilot's watch from them would be a flyback, but all good.
Yeah.
Just a random question. I do have one for you though.
Okay.
Were there any other brands you tuffled with before you landed on Brightline?
Tudor pretty heavily.
Tudor.
Yeah, because I keep just thinking of the fact that a younger Bond would gravitate to that.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that they are a lot more playful with their designs than Rolex, but
Yeah.
similar to Omega, they still do it very well.
Yeah.
Um, and the Black Bay 58 is just a watch that if we were to be doing this and I started an hour ago and I had Tudor, the Black Bay 58 could have been in 2 of these categories easily.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that watch is
Absolutely.
just incredible. And then you get the 56, which is a little, or Black Bay 54, 56, whatever it is, that's a little smaller. They've got their version of the chronograph. They've got all kinds of stuff. That one was difficult, but like I said with you, it's like if you're gonna do Tudor, you might as well do Rolex. So I
Yeah.
went with Breitling. And similar to you too, I thought this was just a little more interesting as far as like the heritage part and then diversifying the categories. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
especially if you
I
go
feel,
vintage Tudor, people are gonna be
yeah.
like, well, that's really just a Rolex at that point. Like that one
Yeah.
is basically a Rolex.
Yeah, it made it hard. It really did. It made it hard to pick when you with all these categories. If it was pick a staple watch and expand on it, like I probably would have gone a lot of different directions.
So
Yeah, to cover like a wide range like this,
yeah.
you're really tapping into some brands that have some heritage. Another brand I looked at was Jaeger-LeCoultre,
Hmm.
which they make fantastic watches and timepieces. I
Yeah.
think the price point's a little out there for Bond.
The reverse was insane.
Yeah, I think there's some things in there I would like to see on Bond's wrist. However, it's just like it's a stretch,
Yeah.
when you get into that realm. Obviously, I wouldn't go anywhere near like an AP,
No.
or a Patek.
Hmm.
It's too up there, as
Yeah.
far as attainability and price point. So
And it doesn't
it
make
was,
sense for him.
yeah,
It's like it's the way
yeah,
Vesper sums it up on the training scene rail makes total sense. It's like
yeah,
it's supposed to be somebody who was given these things and then maybe got a taste for the finer things because of what he
yeah,
was given. He didn't, like a AP or a Patek, it'd be like I was born with silver spoon type of thing.
yeah.
Um, so here is your entire collection. I'm going to ask you
Lineup,
one last question here.
sure.
Which was the easiest to pick and which was the most difficult? So for easiest, kind of just point out the easiest, and then difficult, I'm assuming there was a second or third option. What was that option?
So obviously the easiest one was the sub, like
Yep.
hands down. I mean, everyone
No
probably
date.
knows that.
Always no date.
Yeah, yeah, no date on that one. Like that was even there was no question. As soon as I was like, I got to pick a staple, that was like, boom, it's
Right.
that. Didn't even think twice about it. I as far as the hardest pick, I would say probably the Oyster Perpetual. I was really toying around with that dress watch because there's a lot of different avenues you can kind of go down with that.
Hmm.
And, I feel like Rolex does a really good job of, showing off their luxury pieces and what they have available.
Right.
So how far away from the, you know, typical equation did I want to get? I mean, these are all very controlled picks. These are all very on brand for Bond, as far as what we've seen in the last 20, 30 years.
Right.
I didn't do anything earth shattering. I think like the Daytona is really the biggest stretch in all of my picks. But funny enough, the Daytona is the one watch out of all of these I would want in my collection. That would
Yeah.
be the one Rolex I would gravitate towards having.
Yeah.
Everyone would be like, "Oh, don't you want a sub?" And I'd be like, "No, because I have watches that look like that or scratch that itch."
Right.
The Daytona is like would be its own thing.
Yeah.
Even the Oyster Perpetual would be a little bit different than what I currently have. So
Yeah.
but
Great
yeah,
picks,
what
guy.
about you, man?
So for mine, the easiest actually was the top time. And then I'd say the most difficult was probably the premiere and not so much difficult. I mean, it's to me, that's their go-to dress watch, but the current top time I think can be dressed up pretty well. A lot of them have like racing influence, like co-branded racing influence, which kind of helped me divert from that. But um, like I said, I love that old school look with the chronographs with the pushers. So the premiere was probably the most difficult, but like I said, it made the most sense for that category. But I almost had two top times in here, but I'm glad we both did five completely different watches and five completely different avenues of the brands.
What's funny is when I look at my lineup and your lineup, it's so funny how different we went on bracelets and straps.
Oh yeah, Yeah.
Like it's really interesting. I mean, some of that's because Rolex makes their watches a certain way. You know, I did say like I would like rubber on the titanium
Right.
Yachtmaster, but other than that, I was kind of like I'll stick with the bracelets, and you're very diverse with the leather straps, the rubber, and the metal bracelets. I mean, even with the top time, I know you said the image was kind of you had to get what you got, but
Right.
it's just like I do think. I mean, we haven't seen Bond in a leather strap watch since. I mean, yeah, he wore the vintage Inspector, but that's it.
Yeah.
So I would like to see. I would like to see a true dress watch. You know, this time around. I would like to see Bond with something leather on there.
I agree, guy. I mean, that's what's funny is the Super Ocean, you could easily put that on a bracelet. The Top Time, I would be completely fine with him wearing it looking just like that. But I'm not gonna lie to you, I've never been a huge fan of Breitling's bracelets. There's a
Hmm,
very good taper in there. Like I love the way that
yeah,
they taper, but when you look at like the Colt or those types of things, when the links are like almost on an angle, it's not my favorite look in the world. So for me, it was just kind of easier to stick with this. And then I think a Navitimer on a bracelet's just not right.
So, all right, which one would you pick from my collection?
Oh,
Which one
okay.
would be the one you would be like, oh, I gotta pick one. Which one would your pick be?
Mm, like to own myself.
Yeah, like if you had to pick one out of these five,
Oh,
which
it's
one would you be
also
like?
the Daytona.
Yeah.
That's easy. Yeah, I mean, I've always liked the Daytona. If
Mhm.
I'm gonna get really nuts, it would be that platinum Daytona, which is just never gonna happen. But to be honest with you, if it wasn't that, I think I would do that Oyster Perpetual because
Yeah,
the sub, I mean, the no date sub is great. The Yachtmaster is great. I think the Oyster Perpetual is just very it's fluid. You could wear it in a lot of different settings. Like you can wear that with a
yeah,
t-shirt, you know.
it's an all
So
around.
yeah, and I love like especially what Omega's doing with their Aquaterras now. I love that look.
Mhm.
I absolutely love that
Yeah.
look. What would you choose from mine?
So, I mean, obviously, like I would like the top time, but honestly, just looking at them, I think I'm going with that chrono map, bro.
It's
Like
sweet, isn't it?
that thing, like it's different.
Yeah.
It's bold. I like it. Is that
Yep.
a fixed bezel or is that a rotational bezel?
I think it rotates.
Oh,
I'm pretty
sick.
sure it rotates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never tried it on, but I will tell you next time I'm in Brightling, I'm gonna try that on just for
Yeah.
you
You
because I
better.
just want to see. I want to see it. I want to
And
see it on.
they'll have a Las Vegas Raiders too, which that's the thing. They have a chronograph version of these, and inside one of the chronograph dials, it would have the team's logo. But
Oh,
if
got it.
their current NFL line, most of what is available in the stores looks exactly like this, but then on the back it would have the Raiders logo. So the dial would just be like a really nice black. That's it.
Yeah.
And I think um also six between 6 and 7,000. And like this one here for a GMT 6700, it's kind of unheard of.
So
I mean, you got to
no, it's
basically look at
fair.
Tudor for that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
for that
pretty
price
damn
point,
nice.
it's solid. Like
Yeah.
you can't argue with that.
And then, like I said, they sell these on rubber straps as well. So this was one I thought, what is most like a Seamaster, but not exactly a Seamaster? And yes, normally it would be the Super Ocean, but I think the Chronomat, similar to like you said, I think it's just the most well done that they have right now. That's the one, and I'm in there all the time because I'm really good friends with all my pals at Breitling. But that's the one I'm always looking at. And after doing this too, I was like, you know what? I need to spend a little more time looking at some of the other ones,
Yeah.
especially the Super Ocean, because
That was
5400 or
one I
whatever.
was gonna say. That was one I thought was gonna make it on your list with the Melanese, like the three hand Super Ocean.
Yeah,
I was like, I had a feeling that's what you were gonna pick. I was like, and then you went with a different route, and I
yeah.
was just like, okay. I really thought that was gonna be in your list. I
You and
was
I
like,
both
I could
put
have bet money
some
on
thought
that.
into it, dude.
Yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate you reaching out to do this. It's definitely been fun. It was an exercise I wasn't prepared for,
You did
but
perfectly, guy.
it made me think, and look, now I can say my disclosure here. Do I think Bond will wear Rolex again? Absolutely not. I just
Yeah.
don't think they're the brand in the direction that they are heading, and the way they approach their marketing with clients. I just don't see Bond folding into that kind of plan,
Right.
especially for them. I could be
Right.
wrong, but it's just it just doesn't. I just don't see a fit being there. I think there's a lot of history there, a lot of heritage, but it was a good exercise to kind of go in there and kind of like look behind the curtain and say like, okay, what's Rolex about? How would that fit in the Bonds world, nowadays? But those would be the picks. It's just that's pretty much it. You're not getting like overwhelmed with anything innovative or new or different.
Hmm.
It's just like these have been around for a while. They'll make subtle changes. Like I'm not trying to completely like bag on them. It's just I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just I think the direction of the Bond watches, specifically since Omega kind of came onto the scene, is Bond kind of is part of the innovation of their newer models. I mean, look at the No Time to Die. I mean that was planned and developed, with a partnership between the two brands, and
Yeah.
I just don't know if Rolex would be as willing to do something of that nature with Bond. And if they do that, we're looking at like one watch,
Yeah.
not
I agree
multiples.
with you. I just flat out don't think they'd do it. I just think they'd be like, nope, no way. Take it or leave it. We're Rolex,
Yeah,
take it or leave it. And you know what? In a sense, they have the right to
that's
do that.
fine.
That's
That's
fine.
fine.
Yeah,
That's
it's
fine.
totally fine. But
Yeah.
I think we're kind of used to, new Bond or new movie, new watch,
Yeah.
And and I'll tell you this, I would hate to see him go to Rolex and just literally wear a no date sub for 4 or 5 movies straight.
I definitely don't want that either. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people would like that. I used to be that way with like the Brosnan Seamaster. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
the Bond watch. We can't change it. Like this is what it is. And I will tell you, it is kind of refreshing to attach a new model to a new movie, and it's like, oh, okay, this is like its connection to that particular
Yeah.
film. I mean, you can have some rollover, like we did with the Aquaterra in Spectre into No Time to Die, or the Planet Ocean. I know the sizes were different, but Casino into Quantum of Solace. But I think it would be interesting if his personal watch stayed unchanged for the duration of the arc.
Sure.
If they do another arc, have one staple in there that does stays unchanged, and then have him have an alternate watch, or like I like the idea of it being his personal watch. That's the one that stays the same,
Remains. Yeah.
like the Aquaterra.
Yeah.
But
Well, thanks, guy.
yeah, man,
Always great hanging out with you. Always a great job. Great picks.
you too.
Thank you, guys. Omega Bond watches the Paisan. Thank you for joining me, guy.
Hey, my pleasure, man. I'm always available to jump on with you, man. A lot of history here,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
we'll get
always fun talking
another.
watches.
Oh, I knew I couldn't do it without you, guy. So hey, thank you guys for watching. If for some reason you don't know who this guy is, this is Omega Bond Watches, Lorenzo the Paisan. You can find him at Omega Bond Watches on Instagram. My daughter's newest favorite toy, the Omega Bond Watches keychain. Thank you guys for watching as always. I will catch you on the next one.
See you guys.